Hi, my name is Guy Battle. I'm the Chief Executive of the Social Value Portal. We've developed an online tool for measuring, managing and reporting of social value. Particularly we've developed a solution that can be used in procurement, but also contract management. Social value is the value created by an organisation through its activities and through the projects it delivers, measured in terms of social, economic and environmental well-being. More specifically, the Social Value Act defines social value as the environmental, social and environmental impact, and it requires all public sector organisations to consider social value in how they procure and how they award contracts. And this is leading to a total transformation of how the public sector is working with the private sector, on the basis that it's leading to a change in how the public sector procures, and they're getting more engagement around social issues, environmental issues, and ultimately leading to a more responsible supply chain. But conversely, the private sector is seeing the Social Value Act as an opportunity to showcase how well they are contributing to our communities. And interestingly, the suppliers are using it as a way of competing. The better they are, the more likely they are going to win work with the public sector. Key to a successful procurement is the ability to measure social value. And if you think about it, if a procurement officer is managing a particular sort of procurement and it has, or he or she has 6 or 7 different submissions, they've got to be able to compare those submissions, and so it is essential to measure and be able to compare social value. And so we have worked closely with the National Social Value Task Force to develop a framework for social value, and that's called the National Social Measurement Framework, or for short the TOMS framework. TOMS stands for Themes, Outcomes and Measures, and effectively codifies a way of communicating and defining and speaking about social value. The framework is built around 5 themes, 18 outcomes and 35 measures. Each measure has an associated value, so it's actually possible to do a sort of calculation, a financial calculation if you like, of the contribution of any particular contract, if that supplier is able to choose individual measures and then select what it's going to deliver as part of that contract. It's worth saying a little bit more about the TOMS framework. As I mentioned, it's themes, outcomes and measures, developed over a period of about 2 years with about 45 or 50 local authorities, central government and local government association as well. So it has a sort of a very wide stakeholder consultation group. The 5 themes are, broadly speaking, skills and jobs. The second theme is built around community. The third theme is built around regional employment or regional spend. The fourth theme built around the environment, and the fifth theme built around social innovation. Against each of those themes we have 3 or 4 outcomes, and as I said, we have measures, individual measures against each of those outcomes. So it's very simple for an organisation to use that menu, if you like, to select how it's going to contribute above and beyond what would be normally expected on a contract. So during the procurement process, it's really important that officers identify sort of what they're going to assess as an additional social value, and that word addition is fundamental. We're not trying to do an assessment of the core contract. That is common across all of the providers. What we are looking for is what in addition can you as the supplier provide us to the public sector to sort of allow us to award you the project because you're doing more than we would normally expect. So it's that additional social value that's so important that we're looking to assess. Typically speaking, we would expect around about 20% extra. So for every public pound spent, we would expect a supplier to offer around about 20 pence or 20% additional social value through how they are delivering that contract. The measurement framework, or the TOMS, have been designed to reflect local need. but of course that's always worth checking. So if you're a supplier, it's worth trying to understand better about the needs of the local area to see whether or not you can actually deliver against those needs on the basis that the areas of greatest need probably add the most value. But likewise, I think it's really important that procurement officers help suppliers. If you can make it as easy as possible for them to understand the needs of the local community, then they're more likely to deliver more. So that could mean identifying the areas of the local authority area where the greatest need, where there might be a need for jobs for long-term unemployed people, or there might be a need for volunteering in the community. If you can signpost those opportunities to your suppliers ahead of the procurement, then they're more likely to provide those as part of their bid. That way you're going to get the most value out of your supply chain. So it's worth just sort of looking at a couple of examples of recent procurements that we've been involved in. One was in Stockton-upon-Tees, and it was for CCTV. So not a particularly glamorous sort of procurement, and not one you'd expect social value to be delivered on, but actually a significant additional value has been offered by the supplier that's worth something like £70,000 per year to Stockton-on-Tees, and that's on a contract spend of around about £200,000. So that's a lot actually, and that includes jobs for long-term unemployed people. That includes some opportunities for placements. It also includes 2 local jobs for people, and it also includes actual sort of local spend. So that's quite an addition, and actually Stockton-on-Tees awarded on that basis. Another example, which is in Perthshire, and this was with one of our key members, is Balfour Beatty. They've developed a programme for reaching out to ex-offenders, or in fact people in prison. And so they've got a programme where they're giving work opportunities to long-term prisoners, and also those who are about to be released, working on construction jobs. And that is proving a real success. They've already given opportunities to 11 people. 6 of those have moved out of prison and now have got work. And this is the sort of thing we're looking for change. We don't just want the normal, we were looking for that level of innovation. But what's really important to consider in that, if you're a procurement officer, if you hadn't asked for that, you wouldn't got it. Now what's important in that context is that Balfour Beatty were doing that programme, and they're willing to offer it to their public sector customers, but only those customers who are willing to or able to ask for it. So what you don't ask for, you don't get, and that I think is a fundamental sort of challenge I put to the public sector: is be bold, ask for more, and demand more for your communities that you are representing. So I think it is possible to embed social value in any procurement and every procurement. I don't think there is any procurement we've come across where it's not possible to ask the supplier about, what more can they do. Now, it could be as mundane as CCTV, it could be a highways contract, of course it also could be a contract that deals with social care. All these opportunities represent a moment where a procurement officer can ask that supplier, what more what more are you willing to do if you are awarded this contract? And what's fantastic about the Social Value Act, it allows you to ask that question. You can't demand it. So what you cannot do as a procurement officer, you can't insist on an apprentice being engaged, or a work placement, or local spend. What you can do is make it a kind of competitive element, so you get 5 suppliers all competing around these issues, and of course the supplier that offers the most is most likely to win. So if you're trying to get your suppliers to compete on CSR, i.e. being more good or doing more good, and they'll win more work. Now I think that is really important issue for procurement officers to think about, and how do they build their marketplace. So as a procurement officer, you're going to get more out of your marketplace if you spend time in that marketplace. So it's about building that capacity, both in the larger businesses and small businesses. One of the key criticisms that some organisations are concerned about is whether or not the Social Value Act is making it harder for small, medium enterprises and indeed the voluntary community social enterprise to engage with and win work with the public sector. The advantage of the National Social Value Measurement Framework, or the TOMS, is that it creates a level playing field. So literally you have a menu of ideas. So whether you're a big organisation or a small organisation, you go into that restaurant, if you like, and that restaurant has a list of opportunities, and big or small, a big wallet, a small wallet, you have the same choice. And in that way, it really does level the playing field between the big and small. And what we're seeing is that, interestingly, is that small businesses are tending to win more work through the Social Value Act, and that's probably because they're more embedded into communities already. So actually, if you're a big business coming from outside that community, it's going to be harder for you to work with local schools, make those links. But if you're a smaller business already working in local communities, well, you've already got those connections actually, and you're not probably spending money on them. So it's easier just to sort of provide them as part of the contract. There's a number of myths that are worth busting at this point. The first myth is that putting social value into contracts adds cost. We have found no evidence whatsoever that this is the case. In fact, we find that the reverse is true. Yes, you get more value, and sometimes that might cost a bit more, but actually what we do find is that, generally speaking, businesses that have embedded social value do not charge more for delivering it. As a result, this does not lead to price inflation. So that's a really important sort of first step, and a first myth buster, if you like. I think the second myth or challenge to discuss is that of relevance and proportionality. And there is a sort of question about whether a procurement officer should include a full list of measures in their procurement. And our view is that you should do that, because you should be allowing the businesses that you might be working with to choose what's relevant and to choose what's proportional. They are best placed to do that. So they might already have a young offenders program, in which case they will provide it and offer it up. But if you were not to make that possible, then they're unlikely to offer that solution up. What's interesting about social value is that it does cut across sort of competition. And so you're much more likely to see collaboration. And we've seen a lot of collaboration in regions. We've seen collaboration across sectors. And in fact, we've even seen collaboration within the private sector. And that's because social value is one of those sort of unifying opportunities, if you like. And so everyone can agree that it's worthwhile spending more in our communities. Everyone can agree that providing jobs for long-term unemployed is the right thing to do. Everyone can agree that volunteering in our community is the right thing to do as well. And so you're more likely to get agreement across departments that embedding social value delivers value for all the community, and you're more likely to get a much more collaborative, open approach to procurement. So the question is, where do you start on this journey? And there's no right place, there's no wrong place, there's no place you need to be or ought to be. I think the key thing is just to start. Now, thankfully, there's quite a lot of resource that's available, and of course lots of lessons learned from local authorities who've been delivering social value for probably 3 or 4 years now. So at the Social Value Portal, we house a resource under the National Social Value Task Force. And under that, we've got 2 particular useful sort of resources. The first is the Social Value Maturity Index. And this is quite a useful tool. It allows you to assess where you are now against a range of themes, but also allows you and your team to decide where you want to be. And in that process of now and where you want to be in the future, you can then plot and plan an implementation plan, so you can work out the steps you need to take to move from being a follower, for instance, where you are just meeting the requirements of the Act, all the way to being mature, a leader, and even an innovator, where you are getting 20-30% additional social value out of your suppliers. The second resource is the National TOMS. So the National TOMS, or the National Social Value Measurement Framework, is an open source, free to use tool. You can download it as an Excel spreadsheet. It's got all the information you need that describe each measures, the resources, the sources of those measures, and indeed all the data that's around it. And you can use that spreadsheet in procurement, or you can even work with the Social Value Portal, and we'll help you embed that digitally into your procurement solution. We all have our part to play in the procurement process. It does start with the procurement officers, who I think to some extent are the new heroes in all of this. I think I've been watching this from the outside a little bit at least, and the procurement officers have been, I think, an undervalued resource in local authority. But now's their moment to shine. By embedding social value into procurement, they can deliver more. But that's just the start of the process. I think the other piece of the puzzle is the commissioner. The commissioner can begin to think more broadly about how do they get more social value out of the design of the solution they're putting forward that their procurement officers will then begin to deliver. And of course we come to the contract management team. After it's been procured, the contract needs to be delivered. So it's fundamental to ensure that the suppliers continue to understand their obligations and actually deliver against their promises. And that's really important for the ongoing success of the Social Value Act. Of course, we also need leadership, and this is where the Chief Executive, the members come in, and members need to set policy. They need to set a sort of level of expectation from their officers, putting community first, saying we want more out of our supply chain for our community, and helping their officers understand where the greatest needs are. I mean, if you want to find out what a particular community needs, who better go to than the member representing that particular community. So I think in that way we need to kind of join it up, the member developing the needs, the commissioner designing a solution that relates to those needs, the procurement officer sort of embedding that into the procurement process, the contract manager working with the supplier to make sure that's delivered through, and then finally sort of feedback to ensure that the whole system is delivering against the promise.